Nation. I'm on behalf of Maureen Peltier today.
Bonjour, bonjour, welcome.
Now,
All right, it's just before 11:30. Welcome, everybody. My name is Patricia McGiskin. I'm with I'm the Special Education Support Technician with the Chiefs of Ontario, the Education Unit. Welcome to our lunch and learn today. It's with the Provincial Demonstration School, and I'm going to introduce Kristi and Amy, and they will provide the presentation. So I will just completely hand it over to you, and we'll have a quick, after the presentation, we'll have a question period, and we'll keep moving along. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Patricia. And I understand this session is being recorded so that it can be placed on the Chiefs of Ontario website so that it will be accessible after this date. So please feel free to refresh yourselves if you wanted to check back at anything and let others know about it, that it's there. So thanks so much for joining us today so that we can share some information about the resources that are available at the Provincial and Demonstration Schools Branch. We wanted to thank also Patricia and Holly and the Chiefs of Ontario for facilitating this lunch and learn today. I'm joined by Amy, my colleague, and I think also our colleagues, Amanda and Beth, are here, and if not here, they will be joining us. And Beth is from Vision Resource, and Amanda is from Deaf Blind Resource. So before we begin, we wanted to take just a minute, if you could move the slide, Amy. Thank you. To recognize the space, place, and lands on which we work and gather today. Wherever we are in Ontario, we acknowledge that we're located on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples who have tended these lands since time immemorial. We acknowledge this land, the peoples, and the treaties in place here because the first step to reconciliation is recognizing the first peoples who lived here. We acknowledge our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain these lands and the natural resources contained within. We want to acknowledge that the land on which we live, work, and play is First Nations territory. So please take a moment now to recognize the people's ancestral lands, traditional territories, treaties, and communities where you currently work and reside. We wanted to be able to share our Sir James Whitney land acknowledgement that actually has one of the students at the school using American Sign Language. Unfortunately, privacy prevents us from recording that session, so we couldn't use it today, but we hope to be able to share that one day soon. So a little bit about Provincial and Demonstration Schools Branch. One thing that Amy and I have learned especially at the First Nations Sharing Forum in November, is that the term provincial schools means different things to different people. So that was great learning for us. So when we are referring to provincial and demonstration schools, it means to us that we are supporting students and educators in learning environments across Ontario. So that's where we're coming from when we talk about it. So in PDSB, we're separated into kind of two different parts. So we have our schools section, and we have 3 schools for the deaf in the province of Ontario, and they are located in Belleville, Milton, and London. And in those same locations, we have 3 schools for students with learning disabilities. And then in Brantford, we have a school for the blind, low vision, and deaf blind. So that's kind of where we are with regards to our schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about those as we go throughout the presentation today. Amy and I are coming to you from the resource services side. And on that side, we have home visiting teachers and we have consultants. So we're going to talk a little bit about both of those roles and the resources that we can offer to support you and your students and families that you also support. Okay, Amy, you can go ahead. So again, as I mentioned, for this session, Amy and I will be discussing supports for deaf and hard of hearing learners. Beth and Amanda are going to be hosting a similar session in April, and they'll be discussing the blind and low vision supports that are available. So in the provincial resource, in the education side, we have supports for both preschool, early years, and school-aged deaf and hard of hearing learners in all sorts of educational settings. I'll just get you to move ahead, Amy. And I think an important thing to remember, and that we usually tell when we work with teacher college candidates and early childhood educator candidates, is that everyone in our department is accredited by the Ontario College of Teachers, so that when we support families, we are supported by the Ministry of Education, so families can feel comfortable knowing that everyone is certified as a teacher. We're also specialist teachers of students who are deaf or hard of hearing. So that means that all the teachers in our department have gone on to pursue extra education in the field of deaf and hard of hearing students and the best ways to support and teach those students. And then many of our teachers also have other supporting qualifications. So they've gone on to get their master's or their principal qualifications, or for their learning in American Sign Language. So just that you know that everyone has a lot of varied backgrounds, and we try to pair people with students and families that they are best able to support. Okay, Amy. Okay, so just about our delivery model. So the things that we want you to know is that we deliver services across the province of Ontario. They can be either on location or remote. We got very good at doing that, of course, during COVID when we all learned about Zoom. So we have a love-hate relationship with Zoom. It certainly allows us to reach many more people and to do many more things, but of course, technology. There's no cost for our services. It is, Resource Services is part of the Ministry of Education, so it is free for service. And all the services that we're going to talk about are available upon request. So there are many different avenues to access services from Provincial and Demonstration Schools Branch. So we're going to take a look at this graphic a couple of times in the presentation. So first, I'm going to talk about our resource service teachers. So when a child is born and diagnosed with a hearing level, they're often referred to our program and paired with a resource service teacher, or otherwise known as a home visiting teacher. So those teachers can support families from the child's birth up until they enter full-time childcare or they start full-time school. And their services can be a little bit different. So they can provide in-home services. I think if you go to the next slide, Amy, it shows a little bit more about the preschool. So they can do in-home services where they would visit families, and they support language development in spoken language and American Sign Language. They can visit these families virtually if that works better for a family schedule. They teach families about hearing differences, about the technology that their child might be using. And basically, they help prepare children for school entry. Families also have the option of attending in person if they live in the vicinity, or virtual playgroups. And these playgroups focus on different things. So they focus on themes such as music, art, storytelling, some math themes. And the best part about those is that they allow children to see other children who are just like them. A lot of times we find that young children who have hearing differences might be the only one in their community. They might be the only one in their school. And so it's really helpful for them. And there's lots of research that shows that how beneficial it is for children to see others that are like them. They also have ASL classes that people can attend virtually or in person. So those are some of the things that our home visiting teachers do. And go ahead, Amy, to the next slide. So because our home visiting teachers are teachers, they look at all areas of the child's development. So they do have a curriculum that they follow and that they report on. The same as schools have reporting periods, our home visiting teachers do as well. So they will report on a child's language development in both spoken language and American Sign Language. And it doesn't matter if the home language is different than English, because it just matters that the child is using language. So our home visiting teachers work with the families to support them in the language of instruction at home. They will also comment on students' literacy, mathematics, self-regulation and well-being, problem solving and innovating, and belonging and contributing. So all of those things that become more important when they start full-time school and they get report cards from school. There are a lot of resources that our teachers use that they can report on math. So it's very difficult, you think, to report on math as an infant. But that's one of the beauties of our home visiting teachers, is that they can show families all the math that is around them all day long that they might not recognize as being math. So when they're pointing to objects, when they're looking at different colors, when they're climbing over objects or under or through things, all of those are math principles. And we're teaching families about that language right from the very beginning. So back to our service wheel here. So those are our home visiting teacher support. So again, they can do in-home service. We have our play and learning centers. We have play groups, both in person and virtual. And then on the consultant side, which is where Amy and I come in, we can provide some different supports. So once a child begins full-time childcare, we can visit the childcare and do a child observation. So that means we go in, we spend a few hours there, and we see how the child is coping in their environment, how they're listening, how they're handling noisy environments, how they're handling transition times, how they're using their language in that environment. And then we can provide a report and strategies for the family and for the educators. Another thing we do is we talk to the center about how to set up that environment to be more inclusive for that child, as far as making an easier listening environment. And a lot of times these are simple changes that people just don't necessarily think about, that might make it difficult for a child with a hearing difference to participate. So sometimes we can make very simple changes to make that environment more accessible. Another thing we can do in the Child Care Center is provide professional development for the staff so that they get a better sense of what it might be like to have a hearing difference, and then they can and better support that child. So the role of the consultant encompasses several different capacities that we saw on that previous slide, but the primary goal is that we support learners and educators in an educational setting, and that can either be school-aged children or in the early years. So we provide specific student consults and supports for professionals that work directly with the student who has a hearing difference. We provide professional development opportunities for all educators and educators in training. And again, that has changed a little bit since COVID. We used to do all of our professional development in person. We used to have a few in-person workshops a year. But since COVID, we've moved to Zoom, and it's been actually quite successful because we can have people come in and present at a much reduced cost because they are just joining us virtually. So we try to get as many different themes as we can in a year, and we offer professional development that way. We also work to create connections between educators throughout the province to share ideas and resources. So we do have a monthly meeting with itinerant teachers who work with deaf and hard of hearing learners across the province, and we get together on Zoom once a month, and people just share any issues that they're having in their current placement, or a really tricky student they want to share ideas about. So I think that's a really great support for our educators in the province. We're also very fortunate to have a consultant who can do ASL assessments. So if a child is using American Sign Language, he can assess their levels and help determine programming for those learners as well. So these are our referrals. We typically work on a referral basis. You can see at the bottom the website that gets you access to our referral link. And basically, we can support in any way that you need. So there are lots of different things you could put on a referral, but basically, if you want to make a phone call to one of us, we're happy to talk through that with you and determine which of these would be most appropriate, or simply just have a conversation and perhaps support over the phone. But as I mentioned, we do have ASL assessments. We can do consultation for interpreting services. We do have resource interpreters who can support either hiring interpreters throughout the province. We can support with admissions to schools for the deaf. We do consultations, again, for childcare centers, and consultation around assessment and programming and transition programs. We can support in IEP meetings or IPRCs. And then we can do in-service in the form of a presentation or workshop, or in the form of our webinar series. So again, another thing that was born out of COVID, we did create a series of workshops that discuss topics such as how we hear, overview of American Sign Language, deaf and hard of hearing technology, how to create inclusive environments. So we've presented that webinar series quite often, especially to teacher college candidates and then school boards as well. Okay, we typically receive between 500 and 600 referrals in a school year. So that's kind of where we're at right now. There are 4 consultants in the province. We are down a couple, so we hope to have a full complement again soon to help address a lot of the referrals that we do get. Okay, Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so why don't we just take a look at each type of referral just to give us a better idea of what services are available and what that potentially could look like for you wherever you are in Ontario as well. So we have for our early years support, this is if a child, Kristi had talked about a home visiting program, and that's if that's before a child starts school or is enrolled in a childcare center. So that's really focusing on parent education. So part of our role as well is when a child is transitioned into a childcare center, we're able to support staff with PD tailored specifically to that student's technology, their hearing levels. We're able to provide observations as well, and connecting it to the 4 frames of the kindergarten too, just so that that transition to school is as successful as it possibly can be. And then we're also able to provide an array of different workshops as well. So whatever the staff feels like they need a bit of support with, accommodations, like Kristi said, sometimes it just takes someone going in, looking through a deaf and hard of hearing lens, and then making some specific tweaks as well when we're talking about exposure to language versus access to language as well, or implementing hearing assistive technology too. So if we looked at our school age support, we always work collaboratively with the itinerant teachers or the hearing resource team or the CERTs in the school, the admin as well. We collaborate and partner. We don't just come in and offer recommendations. So it's a real team approach. This is just a list of the services that we're able to support with, but we are, again, able to provide student observations through a deaf and hard of hearing lens. And we offer an array of assessments, language, reading, writing. And then, like Kristi said, we have a colleague who also does American Sign Language assessments as well. And then we're able to provide support with those formal meetings if we need to have more courageous conversations with families. We're able to support with that too. And we're able to support and provide information in the student's classroom. I think this is one of my favorite parts of this job because it gives the student an opportunity to talk about their hearing levels, their technology, how their classmates could potentially be a better friend, a better listener for them, and their classmates are understanding their hearing levels. We can run listening simulations as well. So there have been a lot of aha moments that it's not that this student is ignoring me. They just might not be able to hear you because you're a little bit too far away, or when you're across the yard and yelling their name, they might not be able to overhear you yelling. So for me, this is one of those the moments in the job that I just get that job satisfaction out of, and supporting students taking into ownership of their technology and their hearing levels as well.
Amy, now that you mentioned that, recently I did a workshop for a grade 7 class, and it took a long time to get it set up because the family was worried that we would center that child out. But we ended up doing and he actually didn't want to come to school that day because he was worried about it, but he came and he was so happy. He smiled the whole time because his friends finally understood some of the difficulties he was having in class. So that was a really positive moment for him and for his classmates. And I think it was really good for self-esteem too, and for him moving forward. So I think he'll be a better advocate for himself moving forward as well.
So again, like we said, support is individualized for each student and of course their family as well, but we are able to support with transitions into childcare, into different class placements. A lot of time we have families reach out and just want to have conversations about what different classes look like in different school boards as well. We obviously encourage them to reach out to the staff at those school boards, but transitions into schools, and then obviously we support with the facilitating of admissions into the provincial schools, which I'm going to talk about in a second as well. Oh, here we are. So one of the main components of our role as an educational consultant is to facilitate admissions into the schools for the deaf and hard of hearing. So there are 3 schools for the deaf throughout the province. There's one in Belleville, one in Milton, and one in London as well. So these schools are just like a typical school. They're for ages 4 to 21 if there's educational benefit that the student can stay until they're 21. They're for students that are residing in Ontario with an identified hearing level and that can benefit from the instruction in ASL as well. So here are some details about the schools for the deaf. Really, the schools for the deaf are considered to be a bilingual, biliterate, bicultural environment where the language of instruction is American Sign Language and then written English as well. So all 3 schools follow the Ontario curriculum just like any other publicly funded school, but it's just delivered via American Sign Language. So a referral to a school for the deaf and hard of hearing would start with through the referral process. One of the educational consultants, Kristi, myself, or one of our colleagues would come out and review the student information. So we'd be looking at audiograms, looking in their student file, looking at report cards, having conversations, doing an observation, chatting with families, chatting with the team at the school as well. Then there would be a placement agreement. So we're always in agreement with the home community school because we work in partnership. This is just a placement for a student that is deaf or hard of hearing. Then the student would be presented at admissions committee meeting, and then the admissions result would be sent out. So I think this is really important because this gives us an idea of what actually is happening in the schools for the deaf and hard of hearing. We look at these 3 buildings, and to Kristi and I, who are in the schools often, we know they're just regular schools with regular kids. They're just learning via American Sign Language. But for people that haven't been in the schools or are able to come see the schools, it seems like an intimidating place. So really, again, they're just regular schools, but they're offering accommodations that support student success. So we know that language is learned incidentally, just by overhearing and seeing language in conversations and, chit chat around the yard, that's how our students learn. But for our deaf and hard of hearing students, they may not be able to overhear that language because they're too far away, or maybe they don't have a strong language model that's using American Sign Language as well. So these are just some of examples of how incidental learning opportunities are used within the schools for the deaf and hard of hearing as well. So I really like the biodiversity project where they're studying insects, especially the clouded yellow butterflies and the spur-throated grasshoppers. To me, I know that when we're learning a language such as American Sign Language, someone will sign leaf Well, we know there are different types of leaves. We know there are different shapes. We know there are different names. There are so much more than just one sign for a leaf or one word for a leaf. And that comes in many different, in all languages as well. So here at the Schools for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, they really take those opportunities and they're pausing and they're offering a lot more explicit language and conversation and teaching opportunities for the students as well, because they may have missed out on a lot of those incidental learning opportunities in their regular classroom. A lot of the accommodations for the Schools for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing as well. We have visual TVs that we see, so we're not just listening and taking information auditorily. So all information is printed on the TVs where students are able to access. There's also at Sir James Whitney in Belleville, they have Wolf TV. So everything is being signed and then is being broadcasted on the TVs as well. So this is for morning announcements, what's for lunch that day. If there are, weather announcements, everything is being signed and then printed so that students have access to it. The classrooms are much smaller as per the Ontario regulations, but they're from junior kindergarten into grade 6, they're 1 to 4, so 1 teacher to every 4 students. And then from grade 6 until high school, they're 1 to 6, and then in high school, they're 1 to 8. So they have, again, accommodations are that chairs and tables are set up in a horseshoe so that everyone's able to access their teacher and access their peers as well. So our students aren't constantly looking around to see who is speaking next. They can locate and attend to the speaker in a timely manner as well. As well, we have visual fire alarms and safety for students. So we're not just relying on an auditory beep. We have visual lights flashing so that students can access what is going on around them in the environment too. I think another thing that's really important about the Schools for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing is that everybody uses American Sign Language, so there are no language barriers. They have access to language throughout the entirety of the day. So that's office administrators, principals, superintendents, janitorial staff, EAs, other students. So I do think it's really important that it's an inclusive environment where they're able to access language throughout the learning day. Sorry. I have this cough that will not go away. We also have a lot of community partners who support education to our students as well, because we know it takes wraparound service for our students to be successful. So we have OYAP and student co-op. We have right here, the student is operating a Skyjack to get their ticket, which is fabulous. We have graduates from the Schools for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing that come back and do a lot of education related to culture and their upbringing and community as well. So this is Mig Ones. He is a student of Sir James Whitney, a graduate of Sir James Whitney, and he was actually featured in the Our Gifted Children, the summer quarterly, and that was through Patricia as well. So we're very thankful for our partnership with the Chiefs of Ontario. This picture here is of the students. They tap the maple trees on the property at Sir James Whitney. And actually, when I drove in today, I realized that most of the trees have been tapped just because it has been so mild. So they go through this whole process of collecting syrup, the whole tapping process and boiling and bottling, and then they sell it so that they can use those funds towards additional experiences and outings with the student lodging program as well. So we do offer caregiver education series too that we talked about. And so this currently happens virtually. This is typically for caregivers and parents of students that are deaf and hard of hearing before they transition into kindergarten. But this is just an example of some of our topics that we're currently offering. So we can we will share these flyers with Patricia as well if you think this is something that would be beneficial for families that you're working with as well. And we offer a lot of professional development too, which has been ever changing depending on who we're working with and the age of the student. We have done a lot of the fundamental series for schools and admin, just talking about, again, accommodations, implementing those IEP accommodations, what that would potentially look like. We have done a lot of educator and training sessions because we think that early education and early awareness as teachers are just going to support these students earlier on rather than in grade 5 or grade 6 where we know there are red flags. And a lot of community partners. We work a lot with Silent Voice and Voice, the Canadian Hearing Society as well, to really, again, provide wraparound service for these students.
And Amy, also the infant hearing program, I think, is another really important one. I find it works so much better if we have that good relationship with the speech language pathologist and the audiologist and those people that diagnose the hearing level, especially when we're working with families. I'm thinking of one family in particular I'm supporting right now, and it's been very helpful to have all of the professionals involved kind of having the same message to share with this family. So I think, again, that team approach is so important in setting up the best programming for these learners.
Yes, I agree. So again, this is how a referral can be submitted at pdsbnet.ca. But like Kristi said, we are more than happy to be connected via email or by phone or by text. A formal referral does not have to always be submitted. If you just want to have a conversation and potentially see what the next steps would be, or you have a concern or what that would look like and how we could work through that together as well. I know we're a little bit ahead of time, Patricia, but I know our next Lunch and Learn is for April 16th, I believe, 11:30 till 12:30, and that is our blind, low vision, and deaf-blind resource consultants will be here as well to just share information about how they can be contacted and the support that they're providing across the province too. So I'm going to leave with our emails here. These are the 4 consultants. So Kristi and myself and our 2 colleagues, Darren and Wendy. So at any time, please email and we're more than happy to connect.
So I think, yeah, so this will be posted, the video, so that you can have access to emails. But we're happy to take any questions about, that was kind of a lot of information in a short period of time. So if you have any specific questions about a particular service or about a particular student that you're supporting, you can either just type it in or unmute yourselves, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Maybe I'll stop sharing. Is that okay?
Then we can see people. Okay, that's better.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kristi. It's such a vital, opportunity to gain the information of what's out there. And again, we always get confused with all the acronyms and featuring, services for the deaf and hard of hearing, the blind, low vision. It's crucial. Many of our First Nations have many learners that can identify in those areas, and it's again, it's so helpful to have our lunch and learns, and where you're able to provide those opportunities for contacting, even connecting with the services is a challenge, right? And this is what we want to do, is provide these opportunities. And I know you did participate in our sharing forum. We look forward to these partnerships that we have created. We also are working with the tribal councils to get Amy and Kristi and their crew out to the sessions that we have with our educators, because we have sessions all the time. So we're making those connections. If you want both Amy and Kristi to do this session with your education authorities, please reach out, because it's there. Or, you know, again, this whole session is going to be posted on our website. So it's very, very important to get the services out to the families and our learners. Do we have any questions? We have lots of people on board, and I'm so honored, and it's a very humbling experience to have participation. Our First Nations are just amazing. All right.
And Patricia, I think an important thing too that Amy and I had the opportunity, when we had the opportunity to speak with people at the sharing forum, I think it was kind of an aha moment, because people realized that maybe students are struggling in their program and maybe hearing wasn't considered. And so people are like, you know, these are some of the symptoms my student is showing, so maybe I should have their hearing checked, because it is an invisible diagnosis, and it is a low incidence diagnosis. So a lot of times it might get missed or overlooked. So I think it was just important that people start to recognize that that's an important thing to check. And I see Beth and Amanda are on screen. And Beth is again from Vision Resource and Amanda from Deaf Blind Resource. And they will be presenting in April about the resources that they offer. Did you have anything you wanted to add now, or just say hi? No?
Yes, I just took myself off the mute so that I could say hello and say that we're looking forward to sharing information in April, and really enjoyed hearing your session as well. Really interesting to hear the similarities and some differences between our services. So hoping we'll have a good turnout to hear about our services as well. So I'm a coordinator of the Vision Resource Services, so the blind and low vision side, and then I'll let Amanda introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Amanda. I'm the educational coordinator for Deafblind Resource Services. So yeah, I'd say just to, you know, say what Beth said, but we're so thankful to be here to hear what you guys had to say, and then we are looking forward to sharing as well in April.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Amanda.
Okay.
People have extra time for lunch.
Absolutely.
Great. So again, anytime if there are any questions arise after, or it seems funny that after you have a workshop like this, suddenly a parent will approach you with a question related. So anytime, just reach out or share our contact information, and we're happy to support in any way that we can.
And we'll share the slide deck with you, Patricia. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we didn't have a registration for our session, but moving forward, I think for the purpose of sharing the actual presentation, it's crucial to have that. So if you want to present a copy of the slide in the chat, if you can just supply your email contact, that'd be great, and I can forward that information on to you. Otherwise, it'll be available on the website, or you can reach out to me directly at patriciamcgiskin.cu.org, and I will forward it on to you. All right. Again, thank you for your valuable time with us for the last 45 minutes, and we'll make sure that we get the presentation. Very, very valuable. Again, the session will be posted on our Chiefs of Ontario Education website for your resource. Again, if you have any questions, please give us a shout. We will be happy to provide you assistance. All right. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Probably